On a dark and rainy day in Glasgow, a girl wanted to sew. But will she? Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today we're doing something slightly different. You probably, like me, have a favourite shirt in your closet that you don't, well, that might just be me to be honest, that you don't wear because if you wear it, you'll have to wash it. And if you wash it, it means it'll probably last longer. And at some point, it'll be unwearable and you will lose it. No? Just me? Okay, well that is this shirt. I will insert a better close-up in a second, but this shirt is my favourite shirt, by far. I don't know why, it's a really simple shirt, but I've worn it in a couple of videos and I got comments about it and I just love it. It's really comfy, it has that sort of hobbity fantasy vibes without it being, you know, like glaringly obvious. So, the story about this shirt is, I actually bought it on a second-hand website online. The website has since disappeared, so I can't link you to it. But it has no label. Well, it has like a fabric and washing label, but it doesn't have a making label. So it's 100% polyester. And it's this like green linen imitation looking fabric, I guess. It has these puffy sleeves and has a nice little collar. It's not extremely well made, to be honest, and you can see that it's been worn for quite a while because it is sort of, threads are coming loose and stuff. So my idea is, right, I sew things. I like this thing. Let's make more. So hopefully in this video I'll show you how you can take your favourite bit of clothing from your wardrobe and hopefully replicate it. It will depend on what you're trying to do because obviously different clothes have different necessities and different levels of sort of complicatedness, complexity. Anyway, but this should work for a normal shirt basically, and this should be a pretty straightforward one. And if it works out well, I'll put the pattern up on my Patreon. Obviously it'll be in my size, so you'll need to adjust it, but hopefully it will be usable. Let's look at fabric. Fabric, close-ups will be next. I wanted something with either texture, or also the other thing I wanted was to get something that was warm toned because that's where my fabric, my wardrobe is going. But I got 2 meters of each, which should be plenty. Absolutely plenty. I was a bit cautious with how much I ordered because the sleeves could need a bit more. So yeah, so I have this sort of beige camel color, I think it was described as camel color. It's a really slinky fabric, and that's the next point I wanted to make. You should pick a fabric that's close in the weight to the garment that you're trying to replicate, because otherwise it just won't hang the same. This is super, super lightweight, so I thought that these would work fine. Okay. So these are my fabrics. I got 2 meters of each. I will be making hopefully 2 shirts. One that is a light green with stripes fabric, and one that is this really nice sort of sand colored fabric. So now that we have the fabric, the next step is actually to make your pattern. So obviously I don't have a commercial pattern for this. I could have probably found a similar one, but to be fair, to be honest, browsing commercial patterns is one of my most hated things because there's like 800 of them and all you can narrow it down is to tops, and I just, no. So instead we're going to try to take the pattern from the existing garment. Now I've only done this a couple of times. I've done it a couple of times in historical garments just as an object analysis kind of thing, and I did it once when I tried to copy a different favourite shirt, maybe 4 years ago. I'd been sewing for 2 months and I ripped up my favourite shirt to take the pattern. Oh my god, you guys, and it didn't even work out. Anyway, I won't be doing that. So the best way to take a pattern is, of course, to take apart your clothing at the seams and then flatten that out and you've got your pattern. But I still want to get use out of this shirt and there's no way I'm ripping it up. So instead, we are going to be measuring. The first thing you'll need to do is get some paper, get a pencil or a pen, and then basically draw out the basic shapes that you see. that's the easiest way to do it. So for example, in this shirt, I can see that it's got one piece for the front, which is split in the middle for the button packet, but it's the same on both sides. And this is a really, really simple, basic thing. The one thing I do notice is that in this shirt in particular, the armhole is set quite low, but that'll be something really easy to copy. So something important to notice as well is the grain of your fabric. So I can see that the grain of this fabric is going straight up the center front, which is typical. And then for the back, it is literally just one piece, which I can cut on the fold of the fabric. This should be super easy. The thing that'll take most of the guesswork is the sleeve, because although the sleeve is fitted at the top, it's gathered at the bottom. So you kind of have to guess how much fabric, how much the width ungathered is. What I might end up doing is that I'll just use the same width as at the top and gather it, because yes, I will be making a mock-up, don't worry guys. But you can see that like the stitches are coming apart, so I think it's about time, and it's got little cuffs, pretty cute. So yeah, that's what I'm going to go do now. Okay, so I finished taking the pattern off the shirt. It was pretty easy because it's a very basic pattern. So we have the front, the back, the sleeve, the detail of the bottom placket at the front, and the under collar and the upper collar. So I also drew out sort of the pattern pieces that don't really match the shape. So you can see that the sleeve here will be like this. So this is the underarm seam here, and that's the underarm seam there and there, and this is the sleeve head. And I also did the same here at the back because I'm going to cut it on the fold, so most likely, well, I'm going to pattern draft it as 1/2 anyway, so I've halved the measurements to make sure they line up there. And then the other thing I've did is that I marked the grain line on the pattern pieces according to the fabric on the shirt. So the front will be aligned with the grain, the back will be cut on the folds, that's where the grain is, and for the collars, the center back, because they're also cut on the fold, so the center back is cut on the fold, so that'll be the grain. And the sleeve is the middle of the sleeve head, that is the grain line. And yeah, so the next step is to actually take some paper and draft these shapes out. It should be straightforward. A good way to cheat is that because these are basically just a basic bodice block, just take a pattern that fits you well, start with that, and then just adjust the measurements to match these. I might do that. I think it's just easier than drafting the whole thing from scratch. You just sort of trace out the pattern and then sort of adjust the shapes where you can. And yeah, let's go do it. Okay, so here's what I've done. I've actually dug up this basic bodice block that I drafted a couple of years ago for the book Stays in Corsets. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend them, just because they're a really good starting point for anything. If you don't draft it, you can just trace this basic pattern and then alter it to be what you want. So that's exactly what I've done. I've traced it here. I didn't trace the dart because this isn't a fitted garment. So I traced it just by putting it like on top of something light, or the window or something. I traced it, and what I'm about to do now is I'm just going to compare these lines and measurements to my measurements from the shirt, and that should give me a finished piece. And this is the back piece. Then I'll work on the front, the sleeves, and the collars. Okay, you guys, so here we go. We have all the patterns here. So we have the upper collar, the under collar, the back piece, the front piece, and finally the sleeve. Now these patterns may look a little bit weird. In particular, I'm a bit skeptical of the sleeve. I don't think this sleeve head shape is very good. We'll see. But also you might notice that in the front and back pieces here, this is a very, very deep armhole, but it is taken exactly from the shirt as is. So we'll see. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to do a mock-up. And I'm not going to really film that because it'll just be me mocking up. But I'll show you the result, and I hope I won't have to make many changes. Hey guys, so I just wanted to check in to let you know that I finished the mock-up. Yes, believe it or not, this is the mock-up. I found this polycotton shirting that I bought just for mock-ups because it was so discounted that it was cheaper than Calico. But yeah, so I thought I'd just make it out of this, and as I thought the fabric was quite cute, I decided to just make it a wearable mock-up, and I think it works pretty well. I just wanted to show you guys. It's such a simple pattern that I don't think it needs any changes. It's meant to be loose fitting. I think I might bring the armhole out inwards, I guess, towards my arm a bit more because it is quite loose on here. And the last thing I noticed when I was making it was that when I drew out the grid for the sleeve pattern, I marked the width at 70 centimeters, which is what the width of the sleeve head was on the shirt. However, that was then curved, which made the top of the sleeve head much larger than 70 centimeters. So I actually had to sort of ease it in and do a little bit of gathering towards the back. I don't hate it. Actually, you know, I'm a big fan of puffy sleeves, so I don't hate it. And I'm working on my sort of top stitching and collar sort of insertion. Yeah, I actually think it's pretty damn cute. This fabric is a bit heavier than the original. This fabric is a little bit heavier than the original, but I still think it works because it is a shirting weight, so it's a nice little shirt. I also added some trim just on the cuffs here. I couldn't resist. I also hand sewed it. Yeah, so there are a couple of modifications I think I'm going to make. I'll probably make the sleeve head a little bit smaller, and definitely want to bring this out a bit more. It's very, very cut in, even though I think it follows the original one pretty accurately, but because of the difference in the weight of the fabric, it is a bit more noticeable. Anyway, all in all, very successful, and I'm going to start working on the actual fabric that I bought for this. Okay, guys, so I've cut out all the pieces. I thought I'd go through them just to be really clear. So we have 2 bits of the front. I added a 1.5 inches extension for the button placket that will be folded under. Then we have one back on the fold on this edge. Then we have 2 of the upper collar, 2 of the under collar, and 2 cuffs. All of them are on the fold. And then I've also gone ahead and cut one layer of fusible interfacing, one for the under collar and one for the upper collar. Only one, I don't think you'll need more than that. And then 2 of the sleeves. I had to do a bit of a finicky because of the way the stripes run on the fabric, and I wanted to run from the top to the bottom. But yeah, here are my pieces. So the first steps will be to actually assemble this into one piece. So I'm just going to sew up the side seams and the shoulder seams and finish them. I think I'm just going to go straight up and do either flat felt seams by machine or a French seam. I'm undecided for now. But both of them are good and strong seam finishes for items that you'll be using every day and washing. Okay, so according to the video, I guess, we should have finished the main construction of the shirt. And we're now moving on to the details, and this is the collar. I like to set in the collar before I do the sleeves and things like that, because sleeves and such make the garment heavier to handle. So it's much easier to do finicky details like this when you don't have the sleeves on. So you will need, for collars, okay, so I've only done a couple of collars before, but usually the way these collars work is you have an upper collar and an under collar. And the under collar is like the little stand, and then the upper collar is what drapes over it. Didn't realize I was zoomed in there. So yeah, so this is the under collar. It's easy to discern because the under collar is usually curved, and this one has like a sharp point at the front. So you will have 2 of each. And I also cut out one layer of interfacing for one of them. This is just basic fusible lightweight interfacing that I've just ironed on. And I actually only do one side because I don't think it needs more than that. And I usually like to put the interfacing side as the downside, so like the wrong side of the collar. So we're first going to, this is the upper collar. We're going to sew it together along the short edges, and the longest edge, which should be the one that faces down when the collar is on. So I'm just going to pin that together and then put it through the machine. Just make sure that you have the collar right sides facing each other because you're going to be turning it out. And so that means that the interfacing should be out on one of the sides. see here, the collar piece is now together. All I've done is I clipped and trimmed all the seams, and then I went through and top stitched along the edge. So we've got a nice crisp collar now. So the next step is to set this into the undercollar. And the way you do this is you sandwich it within the undercollar. Also right sides facing each other, so you'll need to have your interfacing facing outwards on one of them. And then what I usually do for these is that to make sure they're even, I mark the center back or the middle of these pieces because they're cut on the fold, so there's no seam to guide you. But I just mark it with a pin like that. And then I do the same for my upper collar piece, like this. Ta-da! And then all you have to do is just put it together, aligning the pins, and then that'll be even on both sides, hopefully, technically, logically speaking. We've established here that sewing sometimes doesn't go the way you thought it would. Okay, so the next step in setting in the collar is a little bit weird. It is kind of, when I learned how to make collars, I researched it. I thought this was quite counterintuitive. But basically, you sew one side of the collar. You sew one side of the collar to the interior, and then as a seam, and then you fold the raw edge. You fold the raw edge under on the front. You fold the raw edge under on the front and top stitch it into place. I don't know why it's done this way, but that's how I've been told to do it, so I am going to do it. So this took me a little while to figure out my mock-ups as well, because collars are tricky. But yeah, so the first thing I do is, if you've marked your pieces properly, you don't need to do this, but I find the center back just by aligning my seams and finding the middle. It's not the most accurate way to do it, but it works just fine for me. Like that. And then I also find the center of my collar. I've just checked and it's pretty bang on even, which I was pretty proud of. You just align the center backs like this and pin, and then just pin along the rest of the collar. Something that I noticed on my actual shirt that I'm trying to copy for this is that it's not the upper collar that matches in the center front, it's actually the under collar. So I first pin out the center back, then I align it at the front, and you got to keep in mind that your seam allowance for the collar is 1/2 inch, so just make sure they are dead even at 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch down the seam, which means that your under collar will probably extend a bit forwards past the actual shirt, but it means that where they meet at 1/2 inch is even. So Hello you guys, so here's the current state of affairs. It might not look like much, but have faith. So I've finished putting in the collar. It looks pretty nice. I think the interfacing might have actually not been that needed because it is quite a stiff collar at the moment. But what I'm keeping in mind is that every time I wash it, it's going to go limper. And because this is an everyday sort of wear item, it will be getting a lot of wash. So that's fine. There are some slight irregularities with the collar, but I'm not too bothered. Anyway, today we are moving on to the sleeves. So the first thing to do, I'm going to move over here, is to I'm going to sew the gathering threads on the bottom of the sleeves. Then I'm going to do up the side seams with French seams as well. And then I'm going to put in the cuffs. It's a lot easier to put in the cuffs before it's attached to the bodice just because there's less things to maneuver. And here are the cuffs, which I have gone ahead and interfaced as well. Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. For the cuffs, I think I might do it all by machine, where I sew it to the right sides facing each other, then iron it back and under, and then top stitch to keep it in place. Okay you guys, so the sleeves are finally ready to be set in. When I did my mock-up, I actually had to ease the sleeves in, and easing is when you run a line of gathering stitches. I did this by hand, and you just sort of pull on it so that it won't form gathers like this, but it does pull in the excess fabric and gives you a smooth seam. But I have since fixed the pattern, so I shouldn't need to do that. Yeah, let's see how it goes. So basically all I do is I make sure, so I've marked with a pin the center front of the sleeve, and then, so this is how it goes, and then I just make sure I match the underarm there, like this. Just match up the underarm. Sometimes it's also useful to just mark the top edge of the sleeve so you can match it with the shoulder seam. And then I'm just going to pin outwards from that and sew my machine. Okay guys, so the shirt is nearly done, as you can see. Sleeves are in, the bottom is hemmed. The last thing I need to do, very last thing, is to add the buttons. So something odd about my favourite shirt is that it's actually not a functional button placket. So the buttons are actually sewn through, and you just, because it's quite loose fitting, you just swoop it on and swoop it off. I did that for my mock-up, and I think that's what I'm going to do for this one as well. I don't regret not making buttonholes, so yeah. So the way my shirt is here, it goes right side over left, and then the first button is 13 centimeters down from the bottom edge of the collar here, and then each button is spaced at 7 centimeters, and then the bottom is left loose. Sorry, my brightness was off the charts. So that's what I'm going to do. And what I did for my mock-up that worked really well was I just overlapped them on the stand, marked where the buttons would go, and then took it, like swooped it off, and then sewed the buttons by hand. So that's what I'm going to do. So it's right over left on here. And the way I've aligned it is that I just match up where I top stitched this edge with where I top stitched that edge. That's probably not the most accurate way to do it, but it's how I did it. So. Hey guys, so the actual last step on this shirt, which would have been finished yesterday if my camera battery had not died, and I don't yet have a spare for this one, is that you have to pin the button placket over this edge and then just secure it down. This just gives it some extra stability, and that's what the original shirt has as well. I think they actually did it by machine. I think they probably just saved this top stitching down and then top stitched along there. But I don't really trust myself top stitching this by machine with the buttons on. I think I should have done it, top stitched it before putting on the buttons and then put on the buttons. I think that would have been a lot easier. So instead what I'm going to do is what I actually did for my mock-up, which is I'm just going to pin it and hand sew it with sort of a small back stitch along that edge. You know I had to hand sew. So the way it's done is that in the original shirt, about 1 centimeter above the first and continuing past the last button is where you start the stitch, and then you just do it. It can be a bit fiddly, but it should be okay. So I'm just going to finish that off now. So here we are, guys. So this is obviously the original shirt, and here is my copy. I'm pretty damn happy with it. I think the main difference is the weight of the fabric. So this one is, I think they're about the same weight, but this one is more densely woven, which means it has more structure. But I still really like it. You can see that it has a lot less volume on the sleeve cap from the mock-up, and a lot less volume on here. I actually think I might prefer the other sleeves, even though these I think are much closer in terms of volume. But yeah, pretty cute, pretty successful, super comfy. And I did it, I had loads of fabric left over, so you probably only need 1 meter to 1.5 meters tops. Yeah. Just gonna, yeah. I hope this is helpful in case you do want to copy something in your wardrobe. Every garment has its own little quirks. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and see you next week.